Welcome to the Wisdom to Wealth podcast. This is the podcast where I get to interview the wealthiest entrepreneurs and business owners in the world. I am your host, Shamar Star Cox, TV producer and marketing coach. My goal is to help 6 and 7 figure business owners get seen and get paid by creating binge worthy content on social media. I am also the founder of the Convert Content to Cash Challenge, where we teach you how to create content that actually sells. So if you are a business owner, you are an entrepreneur, if you are a coach, and you want to learn how to create content that sells in 5 days or less, feel free to DM me the word challenge accepted, whether you are on Instagram, LinkedIn, or TikTok. Today, we have the lovely Cynthia Pong with us. She is an award winning executive coach and speaker who empowers women of color leaders to advance their careers into positions of power. A Forbes contributor and LinkedIn top voice for job search and career, she has been featured in HBR, The Atlantic, and on NBC, CBS, NPR, and more. As founder and CEO of Embrace Change, Cynthia leads an elite all BIPOC team who provides specialized coaching and training programs for high performing women of color up to the C suite. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Star. I'm really, really excited to be here. Just amped to chat
Yes,
with you and just be a part of this. Thank you.
awesome. Absolutely. So let's not even delay. Let's jump right in.
Do
Take,
it.
take us on your journey from zero to wealth.
Oh my gosh. Okay, where to begin? I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm starting at zero. And hey, Renaya in the chat, love to see folks joining. But I will say that this was not my first career. As many folks know, I had a very organic, messy, almost sometimes accidental, it felt like, career change from being a public defender. So I'm still a lawyer. I don't practice, but like I was a lawyer and I only became one to be a public defender. And then I burned out of that. So it was like, okay, got to figure something else out and had to go through that whole kind of major pivot journey. Got into my head. I wanted to work for myself, started my own business, failed forward many times. And I'll note too, I feel I am still failing forward and I don't feel any negative connotation around that either. I think that's really just the process. And I've learned to embrace it and almost like look for it as a sign of progress. Um, and yeah, I mean, I just really kind of like scaled the business from the ground up, snowballed it with this niche of working with women of color, mid-career, et cetera. And we've got all kinds of services and offerings now to meet people, create spaces for them that is much needed in this environment. I'll just say that. And I don't know, now we're here. Been really grateful to have a business that is multiple six figures for multiple years in a row. You know better than anyone, Star, it is not guaranteed. It is not a given. You got to work hard, but that's necessary, not sufficient. Like it's got to be that plus like the other stuff. And there's so many things involved. So I won't get too much into it, but obviously we can get into it. But that's sort of my story. It's very much a process.
Yeah, I love your story, right? And Renaya just dropped it in the chat. That's exactly where I was
Um,
going. So we on the same page, Renaya.
yep.
You talked about failing forward, and you were like, I'm still failing forward, and this is a sign of progress. Hey Keish, thanks for joining us. I absolutely love that you're talking about that right now. So what does this look like? What does this failing forward look like? One, and then number two, what were the mindset shifts you had to go through just to be able to accept the failing forward and see the success in your business?
My gosh. That is such a juicy set of questions. And like, please send me back if there's certain parts because there's literally so much there to unpack. I'm just gonna go for it and then you reel me in and stuff. But so basically the failing forward, it could be summed up in this acronym framework that I use in our leadership accelerator. That's C-CARE. So it's a C-CARE. And I came upon this because after coaching like 350 women of color leaders, I realized that the whole thing between them and whatever career, leadership, entrepreneurship goal they had, it was not a skills gap. It was not a deficit of some sort. And I am loud about that. Thank you, Book of Star. Um, and I'll tell you what C-CARE stands for in a second, but I realized it came down to these 5 things that is summed up by C-CARE. The first C is compassion. And that is self-compassion, really, because for women of color, they have pushed themselves so hard. They're their own worst critic. They have the highest unrelenting standards. I say this because I've experienced it myself and I've seen it mirrored back to me so many times. And the inability to give ourselves the compassion that we rightfully deserve can keep us from failing forward. It keeps us from trying things. It keeps us from putting ourselves out there because we're like, let me get all this perfect first. There's no perfect. If you're waiting for that, you waited too long. So like the failing forward is can be accessed through this C care. And I'll just tell you what the rest of it is. The other C is curiosity. So what if you flipped the hyper self-critical perspective into what happens if I do this? What if I look silly in front of so and so? What if I delivered this pitch and it doesn't land? What if I lose this RFP? Like I'm using examples that Starna was just talking about, instead of the, oh my God, if this happens, I am going to be a failure. I'm going to be a bad person. I'm not going to be worthy of success and wealth and respect, all the stories we put in. And then the rest of it, A is for action oriented, R is for real time, E is for experimentation. So if you apply all those things, or if you're ever feeling stuck and you're like, which of these 5 things is missing? I guarantee you will get yourself unstuck and you will be able to fail forward to success. That was a lot.
No, that
Ask
was
me any
great.
questions.
That was great. Give me that first C again. That first C really lit.
Compassion.
Compassion.
That
Oh, I just love that.
Yeah, because I separated that out for a reason because I was like, that's the major one that we want to skip over. But if you skip over it, like there's always a cost. It's going to rear its head at you at some point. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if any of this resonates with you personally, Star, or with your all's clients. But that's just kind of what I found to be the unifying. It's one of those 5 things.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so, how do you help your clients to see this compassion, exhibit this compassion whenever they are moving forward in their career?
I mean, it's hard, and everything Keisha has nailed it too. Compassion is the biggest. It's a process. The first thing to realize and recognize too is love the floral cup. Is like you got to be compassionate with your journey of trying to give yourself more compassion. So it doesn't really work if you're gonna be like, I should do it harder, better, more. I'm not being like that. You're just feeding into that same negative cycle. So the first is really like give yourself a lot of grace around it. And I would say 2 things. One, it's really helpful to have a community around you to support. And I know you've talked about this a lot too. And it's like kind of pervades like everything you're doing and Book of Star and everything. You got to have your people who understand you, who accept you for who you are, who love you and see you for who you are, and who you can feel seen and heard in. Like that's not everybody for us as women of color. It's in fact most people are not going to be that for us. So having that community to support you. And then I'm also just a big fan of like whatever individual support system, your personal advisory board that you need to be your best self, like the therapist, the other kind of healing, the coach, you can have different coaches for different things, right? There's the life coach, the executive coach, the business coach, the sales coach. There's many types. So like figuring out your own formula for the backup that you need, also really important that you invest in that for yourself. I love what's happening in the chat right now. So good.
Yeah, I just love what you're sharing. This podcast, of course, we're talking about, how to turn your wisdom into wealth. But every guest that we have come on, we
Mm,
always talk about the same things, which is mindset, your limiting beliefs, any
yep.
fears that you're holding on to that you need to release. And so that's why this compassion piece really resonates because when it comes to building wealth, it's 80% mindset, 20% skill set. And that actually is
Yes.
a formula for anything, building a
Yeah.
business, creating
20.
content, like, because whatever is keeping you capped or trapped is happening in here, right? And so I remember last year I found myself in a doing, like I was running on this hamster wheel. My goal was to scale my business, right? I wanted to get to the next level of my business and I
Right.
wanted it so badly. And I just felt like if I listen to everything my coach says, if I do everything that God tells me to do, that's exactly what's going to happen. But you know what ended up really happening was that my business became too clunky. I added too many things to it. We spent too much money and I was burnt out, exhausted. I had too many people on my team. A lot of them weren't even doing nothing. So it was very frustrating. And I remember crying to God and I kept telling him, I'm trying, right? And I got to a point that we were in a financial deficit. I had to start letting go of team members. I had to start letting go of some of my programs too, where 2023 we were flourishing because just me and one other person. 2024 we had way too much going on because I'm listening to what everyone's telling me to do. I just found myself in this doing mode. And I just kept going to God and I kept saying to him, what can I do? What can I do? Tell me what to do. Tell me what to do. And finally, it just dawned on me, I've already done. It's time to believe. And I started to ask God, what do I need to believe? And then my next question to him was, who do I need to be? Like that being person. And a lot of it had to do with me giving myself grace and being compassionate. Like 2024 was a learning year for me. I had
Yeah.
to learn and grow through those things. And now, after that compassion piece, I became confident because you can't tell me nothing. I'm like, I know what works. I know what doesn't work. I know
Yeah.
what my audience likes. I know what they don't like. I don't care if you're my new coach. If you can't align with this is what I'm doing, like don't try to change what I'm doing to fit
Right.
yours. I need you to help
Yep.
me to enhance it. And like I had
Right.
to go through that
Yep.
because one, it was refining me. It transformed me from an entrepreneur to a CEO. So I became
Yeah.
an entrepreneur in 2021.
Yep. Yep.
And then in 2023, my business scaled to six figures. In
Mm-hmm.
2023, I went from entrepreneur. In 2024, I went from entrepreneur to CEO. That's a
Mm-hmm.
whole different type of mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you want to add anything or amplify?
Yeah, so I love what you said because what I say to women of color leaders a lot, whether they're salaried or entrepreneurial, is this is a pivot that's really hard for us to make because we're really conditioned to put in the reps, to work hard, to be the A student, to be perfect attendance, like all those things, is shifting from doing to actually leading. And you have to do less so you can lead more. And it's 100% what you just said about the CEO mindset and entrepreneurial leadership mindset. And it all does start with here, right? Like we could win or defeat ourselves starting from like right here, before we even get out of bed in the morning. Like that is how powerful I think it is. So I underscore that tons of thousand. I also think what you're talking about is new levels, new devils. My coach says this to me too. And we have to understand that failing forward, that's what I also heard a lot of in your story too. And I can't let this one go. The fact that you are still standing and growing in all these different ways and experiencing these levels of wealth and success in this year 2025 is major. Like that's a major testament because, and this is not a judgment, but a lot of people who had started their businesses in the last couple of years, you look around, they're not necessarily around anymore because, and I'm not saying that to be like to throw shade at all. It's actually just an observation that is freaking hard. It is really hard. And it's especially hard for BIPOC and women of color and anybody who's coming from a background where you don't have the generational wealth, the generational knowledge, the like benefit of the doubt all the time to fall back on. So I think it's really huge. And I also would say, this is the business coachy part of me. Even as you were saying, like spent a lot of money, had programs clunky, etc. There's wins in every bit of that. Right? There's wins in every single thing, Star. Like whatever you see, maybe that wasn't the right time for that program. But guess what? You now have a blueprint and a framework so that in 5 years, you can have one of your team roll it out again or something. Or, like it can always be transformed into something else. And I think all of those, everything you said is an asset in your business if you know how to systematize, whatever that word is. And like actually make it into an asset. You can go through the same experience and it is an L if you don't know how to leverage it, but you do because you've invested in the people to teach and show and support you. So like you're always going to come out winning. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And you said it right there. I went into that coaching program to scale my business to multiple six figures.
Mm-hmm.
I came out of that coaching program a CEO. I
Mm-hmm.
even told them that. I said, that's my testimony. And they were
Yeah.
like, we're so happy you saw it that way because some people will come in and be like, it didn't work. I'm like, no, it
Right.
totally worked. That's
Yeah.
the way I thought it was going to work. But I
Yeah.
needed to become CEO because the thing is, like, I'm running a multi-million-dollar business.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I won't be able to get
Yeah.
to that unless I have the CEO mindset. And so
Yeah.
you said that failing forward, it's shifting the way that we see things, right? Shifting
Yeah.
our outcomes because everything that's right. This is something that Myron Golden says all the time, and I love quoting
Mm,
it, which is all work works. It's either working
mm,
on you or it's working for you. And for
mm.
me in 2024, honey, it was working on me. Oh my goodness. And he says,
Same.
allow it to, right? He says, allow it to keep working on you until it starts working for you. So
Mm,
I believe I'll get to reap the
Yeah.
benefits of everything I
Yeah.
went through in 2024. If it's not this year, it'll definitely be 2026.
Yep. I
So,
know. Because you're building something, you're building something to last, and it is so messy and it can be very confusing. And like that we have to understand that can be part of the process sometimes, but it's easy to look at other people and just look at the facade. Of course, they're not showing and telling you everything, you know what I mean? And then we like to, compare or like that sort of thing. But yeah, I do think that, we keep sort of putting in the reps, figuring out how do you actually bridge this time, because we're in a very like uh there's just so much going on right now, and there is a lot of pivoting that's still going to have to happen. But it's like I was saying to you beforehand, movement over arrival. There's no arrival where, I had a former coach and like colleague when I was doing this crowdfunding that I did a couple of years ago, and we were chatting once just like socially, and he was like, yeah, I think your business, like, it feels like it's kind of like out of the danger zone now. And I was like, I think every phase in business is a danger zone. Like, isn't because it is that new levels, new devils thing. And there's this great, I've been really obsessed with this motivational speech that Kara, I forget the last name, but a basketball coach from Duke gives about like things don't get easier. Stop waiting for things to get easier. You learn to handle hard better. And I was like, that part, because if we're doing something that's worth building and we're building something out of scratch, you say zero to wealth, like that process, it's worth doing 100%, but it's also hard. And if you want to keep on that, it is going to continue to be hard. It will feel less hard because every moment you're getting better, you're getting stronger, your resilience is building. And I just want to point out one thing that I don't know if this resonates at all with you, Star, but I think for women of color entrepreneurs, especially, and women of color CEOs, when you are really in that CEO mindset and you're really sitting in that space, being in that space, leading in that space, people are going to be mad. Like, there's going to be a lot of people who are mad at you or want you to be another way, or they're not and you feel like they are. The combination of that is really also hard to like break that cycle, through compassionately, like using C-care and all of that. But I just want to point that out because I think it's not something that we talk about too much. And that's really tricky for anyone who has like people pleasing tendencies, any stuff you're working through from the past. Like, it's really hard.
I love that you shared that because that was what most of my issue was last year. I'm like, why is this
Ah,
so hard? Especially because it was hard in 2021 when I first started. It was
yeah.
hard in 2022 when I kept going. In
Yes.
2023, it got a bit easier, right? Because I'm like, okay, we're seeing the benefits of it. But then it got
Mhm.
hard again in
Yeah.
2024. I remember getting so mad at God, like I shouldn't be here. Like I'm in such
Mm,
a dark place. I shouldn't be here. But
yeah.
that was the thing. I was listening to Layla Homorzi, where she's married to Alex Homorzi.
Yeah.
They both
Yeah.
have a powerful multi-million dollar business.
Right.
Acquisitions.com is her business, right? And
Right.
she talked about that it is hard and that
Yeah.
we have to train ourselves to look at it differently. Like hard isn't a bad thing. Like
Yeah.
hard is only making you stronger. Hard is
Yeah.
only making you better, but it is
Mhm.
hard. And I remember just watching one of her podcasts where she was tearing up because of this. I
Mm.
feel like she went through a similar season I went through. She
Mm.
nearly started crying again because she
Yeah.
remembered how hard that season was.
Yeah.
Even though where she is right now, like it is hard. And this is the reason why a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, they do not last long because it
Mm.
gets hard and then they run. I
Yeah.
used to work with beginner business owners and I
Mm.
stopped now. I mean, I still have some that I work with, but
Mhm.
for the most part, I stopped because what I recognize is they do not have the finishing fortitude to finish the race.
Mm.
They just don't. Like they will start and then it gets hard. They don't see
Yeah.
the sales coming in. They don't see the
Yep.
following growing. They don't see their content taking off and they just
Right.
stop. And then the other
Yep.
issue is if they don't stop altogether, they
Yeah.
start over. So every 6 months
Mm.
they're starting a new business. Oh, this is not it. This is what feels right
Oh,
for me. And I'm like, if we started businesses based on what feels right, we wouldn't have
yeah.
many businesses. My business
No.
didn't feel right the first year I started it. It didn't feel right the second year I started it. It don't feel right now in 2025. We don't
No.
do things because it feels right or because I'm passionate about it. I hear people telling me, like, you're so passionate about this. No, I'm not passionate about teaching you marketing. I could care less. I am passionate about making you rich because that is your birthright. Like that is how God created you, to be wealthy and to be rich, to be righteously rich. So for
Yep.
me, when you hear passion, it's not because you're doing video content, it's because you're no longer operating under the spirit of poverty. And it's time for you to be rich and make others rich. So that's where my passion comes from. But I just love that you talked about that, because I don't think we talk about it often, especially with social media, where they make it seem like everything's easy. Like today, I just made $100,000 in a day. Sure, you did that today, but it took you 5 years to do that today.
How much you paid to get that? You know what I mean? Anyway, there's a bajillion questions. I'm so glad you brought this up because it's exactly right. What people see on the surface level, that's your vehicle. And I would say that's your vehicle in this season of your business. Who knows if it will be later on, right? Because things are always evolving too. But the core mission that you have, that stays the same. That's where your passion is at. And that will always drive you. And I do think that is the part where the feeling part belongs. It's reconnecting all the time into what it is you are actually trying to achieve with this thing that is the biggest asset arguably in your career, arguably in your life, which is your career and your means of actually making money. And it reminds me of like when we had our first conversation, that you were telling me, you were asking me about Embrace Change's mission, which is to get all women of color the money, power, and respect that we deserve in the workplace. And you were like, we never talk about that. And I was like, I guess we don't talk about it enough, but I think about it all the time because everything that we do, and I am a little bit of like a maximalist, like we have so many things going on. I definitely think my business would fall into the clunky descriptor, and like I'm okay with that. But like we've got so many moving pieces or whatever, but everything ties back to that. It is all so that we can get more women of color the money, power, and respect we deserve in the workplace, so that we can have autonomy, so that we can have wealth, so that we can have agency to decide how we're going to live our life and like support the life that we want to live under the system of capitalism. So, that's what it is. And it's true. So many people don't. I loved what you said. It was what was it? The finishing fortitude.
Yeah, finishing fortitude.
Oh man, that one. It's true. It's easier to start a thing. It's really hard to do it for the 10th year in a row. Really hard, like, so we got to figure that out. And the feelings cannot be defeating us, because the feeling, like, I think something you're getting at here too is how to have that discernment of when a feeling is like an intuition or a gut or some kind of message to follow, versus when it is actually like a self-sabotaging thing in disguise. How do you figure that out? Because they can look the same, you know?
That's so good. And you're absolutely right, because that feeling of like this just doesn't feel right, or like I don't feel passionate about it. For Christians, I'm not sure if we talk, if you are you a Christian, I'm not sure if we talked about that.
I grew up in the tradition, so I'm pretty familiar. But
Okay.
yeah, talk about it.
So I have a large audience who are Christian. Not all of them are Christian,
Mhm,
but a lot of them are. And I can hear a lot of Christians where they're starting up their business, and then
mhm.
they say like, "Oh, God's not leading me in this direction." Like they will plan
Mm,
everything out, and then it comes time to marketing and selling. "Oh, you know what? God's not leading me in this direction." And
yeah,
they will take so many pivots and never actually start the business. And in their minds, they're like, "It's because God is leading me." But I'm like, God doesn't
mm,
lead you into confusion, nor does He lead you
mm,
by fear. There's a fear here. There's a self-sabotaging story that you're telling yourself. That's the reason why you're not actually doing it. But if you do not know how to discern, if you're not
mhm,
mature enough to identify your emotions, you'll
mhm.
constantly say that it's God when in all actuality it's you. And we can replace, like, for those who aren't Christian, we don't have to say that it's God. For some of them, it's the universe. For some of them, it's their higher, whatever it is that you want to
Yeah,
call it, right?
yep,
Like for me, I know it's God, but it's
yep,
like, what's really guiding you? A lot of
yep,
times it's not God that's guiding you, it's your own emotions and the fact that you're afraid to do something. And
yep,
that's why you're not moving forward. So I really
yep.
love talked about that.
Yeah, it's the story, the narrative, whatever it is we're telling ourselves in our mind. And it's hard, but I mean, you can also shortcut your way through it if you go back to that C-care thing of what's not happening in what you just shared is the action-oriented real-time experimentation. You know what I mean? Some people need acre, like they need to put the A at the front
Mhm.
because there's not a lot that we're putting out there, but it's really easy to get to tell ourselves that it's the confusion. My own business coach has told me this before. One time I was, we were talking about something and she was like, saying something that was like pushing me, in a way that I was like, oh, I'm really in the discomfort zone now. And I was like, but I'm confused. And she's like, your confusion is an excuse for something, something. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so attacked by that, but I guess you're right. You know?
I love that. I feel so attacked, but you're right. You just called me out. And like, but
Yeah.
that's the point of a great coach, right? The coach is able
Yeah.
to see that and they're able to call us out. So let me ask
Hmm.
you this question. What
Yeah.
skill sets did you have to develop as an entrepreneur in order
Mm.
for you to see the success in your business that you have now?
Oh my God. If that is not literally the million, billion, trillion dollar question, what skill sets did I have to develop? I mean, one, I would put them all under, and some people are going to be upset at me about this, but I put them all under the resilience skill sets because, as much as we may hate that we have them, we have to have them. This world is not coddling us. And while I'm all for the spaces that fill up our cup and stuff, like coddling is only enabling some of our like not helpful behaviors. And again, that's like a discernment thing. You got to know the line for yourself. But like, yeah, just being able to, we talked about this, I think, right before too. Well, before we went live, but like being able to put in your all, know what is that line for you too, what's overwork where it's actually keeping you from doing other stuff, and what's underperforming so you really are sabotaging yourself, but like hit that, that good zone where it's like good enough, and then release and not judge yourself based on something that you have literally no control over. So focusing on those performance metrics, for you, for content, for folks, like, okay, you said you wanted to put out X pieces of content in X period in Y period of time. Did you do that? Like, not, I want this number of followers, I want this many views, I want this many likes. Those are vanity metrics at the end of the day anyway. Focus on what you put out there, and the you will reap the rewards at some point. It may not look the way you thought it would, but you'll get the wins, if you focus on the performance metrics. So I will put a major part of the skill sets under that. And then I think another part is just, I don't know, that I'm an introvert. I don't know if we talked about this, Star, but I I really like to think about stuff. And so being able to pull myself out of the day to day and sit in that CEO mindset space, even though I know there's tons of Slack messages I haven't got back to from my team. There's this client, there's that client, there's like so many temptations to not do the bigger thinking work that I'm doing right now. And this, I've decided that in for this season of Embrace Change, it's a couple of things. I mean, it's always sales because you do need to like keep the lights on and all that stuff. But it's also a period of R&D. Like, so much is changing for our community so quickly, and I got to figure out how to leapfrog to like start building the 2050 business model for us now. Because, well, the one thing I can't do is turn back time. At least so far, we don't have time machines yet. So like, what do I need to be doing now so that in 2050 we are still able to be here? Um, yeah. So anyway, the strategic thinking, I guess, would be the other one.
So, girl, that is so, I love it. Like, it's so amazing. The fact that we're in 2025 and you're like,
Yeah.
but then I also have to see how the business is going to be 2050. And not a lot of people are doing that
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
operating from a space of desperation. They're in
Yeah.
survival mode. So it's like, I
Yep.
just need to get through this year. And for
Yeah.
you, it's like, no, it's not about getting through this year. It's getting through the next 5 decades. Like, we
Yeah.
need to be able to get there so that our
Yes.
business is not just, what do we call it? Back in the 90s, a one-hit wonder,
Yeah.
but it's a lifetime legacy. I love that.
Yes.
And the fact that you
Yes.
brought up that first skill, resiliency. And I believe that is one of the main skills that business owners learn, I should say
Mm.
learn and earn in the
Mm.
first couple of years of business. Because if
Yeah.
you're not resilient, you'll give up and quit. I know
Yep.
so many business owners who just gave, like people who started with me. Like they wanted
Mhm.
to work with me, and then they felt like, you know what, I'm not going to work with her. I'm just going to do it on my own. And in a
Right.
couple of months,
Yep.
they stopped
Yep.
just because they didn't have a coach, they didn't have a
Yeah.
community. They stopped. They
Right.
didn't have the like some people are trying to develop the resiliency on their own, but
Yeah.
every time, like you're going to fail in your
Yeah.
business. That is,
Yep.
you're going to fail.
Yep.
But if you don't have someone to remind you, you're going to fail. Get back up. Here's how we do.
Yep.
You're just going to fall behind. If you don't have a community that's cheering you on, keep going. You got
Yep.
this. You're going to
Yep.
fall behind. And I know so many people where they have said no to me when I first started my business in
Mhm.
2021. We
Mhm.
are now nearly 4 years in,
Mhm.
and same people are in the same exact position, still trying to figure it out, still trying
Yep.
to do this, still trying, and it's because they don't have that resiliency piece.
Yeah.
One thing happened and it completely
Right.
shifted their life, it shifted them, and so they weren't able to move forward. So
That's
I
right.
love that you talked about that. So powerful. Did you want to
Yeah.
add anything else to that?
I mean, you're so great to talk to, and it's really hard not to continue this. So I will say one thing. I'll try to keep it on the shorter side, but you're absolutely right. If you look around, there's case studies all around us. Pay attention to who is still around, who isn't. Whose newsletter are you not hearing from that you signed up for last year or whatnot? The 6 month mark is a big one, but also I would say like the 3 year, the 7 year, those are big. I started Embrace Change in 2015. So it is going to be our 10th year this year. And I will say, Star, like I went through a similar thing of being like, the kind of like meltdown breakdown this year of like, what is still happening? You know what I mean? But like, we have to be able to make it through these cycles. And I have a one colleague who's also a longtime client who started at pretty much the same time as me. And not only is she still around and like thriving and growing and moving along with this period of time with like, an amazing, beautiful, growing family and everything, but she has been my longest time client. Like we have been working together for this. Of course, it hasn't looked the same. It hasn't been the same. She's been in group, like all the different things. But I don't think that's necessarily a coincidence because we look around, there's other people who started around that time too. And I'm not quite sure what they're doing. Again, this is not a thank you so much, Keish. I know 10 years. It's just a testament to the fact that nothing's promised, nothing is given. And we have to have our people, the right people around us. We got to keep thinking smart and strategic and like the resilience, like to have the finishing fortitude, because it's worth it. You know what I mean? Like it is everybody's birthright to do this if that's what they were kind of like destined to do, if this is the avenue to wealth.
Oh, I love that. Just so, so powerful. And so, as we're coming to an end in this podcast episode, share with us, for those who are listening and they're really tuned in right now, how can they work with you? And I'll drop your links in the chat as you're speaking.
Thank you so much. So I think the one thing we had talked about kind of honing in on is I do have a VIP day offer that is for entrepreneurs or people who are salaried but like at a certain level of their leadership to work with me intensely for like a 1 day 1 shot deal situation. There's some bells and whistles outside and around that, but that is like my most done for you service. Like if you literally want to walk out of that day with a bunch of systems that are repeatable, with a bunch of assets that you might use to increase your visibility, to move forward your mission, to reach that pinnacle of your career. And I've had a number of entrepreneurs do this. I've had a few salaried C-suite or near C-suite leaders do this too. The VIP day is for you, so check that out at the link. Thank you so much, Star and team. And then for everybody, yeah, my book, Don't Stay in Your Lane. This is the career guide for women of color, but really it can help all sorts of people from any kind of background, any sort of career pivot you're going through. This book will literally help you self-coach yourself through it. So it's really like an encyclopedia, a course that you can go back to over and over again throughout the course of your career. And you can get it for the fraction of the price of even one coaching session. So I write very transparently all of the tea about the good, the bad, the ugly of how I started this. It's in there. So the blueprint is there if you want it. I don't hold back information because I believe in democratizing it. Money, power, and respect for all women of color, Thank you.
Love that. Every time you say that, I just think about Lil' Kim, money, power, respect, what we need in life.
Yes.
I love
Yes.
it. Awesome. Well, I just dropped the links for Cynthia's book as well as her VIP day in the chat so that you can get access to it. All you have to do is copy and paste. If you are tuning in on the replay, you can get access to it. It's going to be in the caption for LinkedIn as well as for YouTube so that you can sign up for her VIP day. As you can see, Cynthia is dope. She's amazing. She's been in business for 10 years, right? And
10 years.
Clients, awesome. Helping her clients going from level to level, wealth to wealth, because wealth does shift. It does increase, right? So Cynthia, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. You have been such a blessing. Your story is powerful and amazing. Thank you to all of you who are tuned in on YouTube and commenting and engaging with us. This was a huge shift. Usually Instagram's more popping, but Instagram was quiet today and YouTube was popping. So y'all like switch places. I love it though. This is a sign for me too. So thank you so much, Cynthia, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Star and Renaya. You all are amazing, and I'm so grateful that we are connected. And and for everything you're doing for everybody.
Absolutely. So again, this is the Wisdom to Wealth podcast where I get to interview the wealthiest business owners and entrepreneurs in the world. We go live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. So tomorrow we'll be back with another powerful episode. So feel free to tune in. We only have our podcast on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. You all have a wonderful day today.
Thank you.